It's my pleasure to welcome you here to the Clark Howard Show, where our mission is to serve you and empower you to make better financial decisions in your life. And I've got something to talk about. It's been really bothering me for a while. All the complaints we're getting about a company that historically has been considered to be one of the best customer service driven companies in the United States, USAA. And gosh, I'm just really nervous about all the complaints we're getting. Also, I talk about how you go to a full commission stockbroker, you may have a full plate of trouble. And I want to give you some reasons for you to rethink being with a full commission brokerage. And I've been asked, what is a full commission brokerage versus the kind that I like, my favorite children? I'm going to explain that to you. So, USAA, the members of USAA have some connection to the military. Either they served or family members served. And a phenomenal organization historically. And especially it's worth mentioning, you know, we just had the 4th of July holiday last week. I hope you had a great one. And we get to celebrate these holidays because of the brave men and women who have served over the centuries in the U.S. military. You know, it took bravery for us to have our independence. It took bravery for us to keep our independence and position in the world. And military personnel have so many sacrifices they make for us, but then at the same time, there are things that come with serving in the military that are wonderful. The retirement plans available, the pension that has been available that's gone through a change recently for newer service members, a wonderful benefit. And then having wonderful organizations like Navy Federal Credit Union, PenFed, and other military-oriented credit unions, and then USAA, the military insurer and one of the nation's largest banks. And I have been a USAA member myself since the 1970s. I joined the same year that I joined then Pentagon Federal Credit Union. I'm not in PenFed anymore, but I'm in Navy Federal. And USAA, I have never had a crossword with them myself and never had a problem myself. But there are many published reports, as well as the complaints that we have heard again and again, both to our Team Clark Consumer Action Center and us here on the podcast and in my TV work. And USAA seems to have had a decline in, to put it in modern corporate speak, a decline in customer service and corporate engagement. In simple words, USAA is letting their members down over and over again. And we, on 2 occasions, have reached out to USAA and said, hey, we're getting all these complaints, what's going on? And they've taken on a bunker mentality and have refused to engage with us about the problems that members at USAA are having. I have not had, again, personal experience with USAA that's been negative. So I have no reason personally to leave. But I'm quite disturbed about the multiple complaints we've had about USAA Bank. There's story after story about what's gone on with the bank, including a story recently that talks about how there are thousands of USAA banking customers who've had money looted from their accounts and then had no help, no response, no empathy, sympathy, nothing from USAA, almost robot-like. This is ridiculous. And then the complaints we've had about an area that we never used to have complaints about from USAA, and that is claims experience. When the chips are down, one of the reasons USAA always ranked as at the top of the heap in terms of insurers for homes and cars is what happens when you do have an accident or you do have a storm hit your home or whatever, that they're there with you, and not as a slogan, but in reality. So I'm kind of at a loss here, other than I have to acknowledge this problem. And again, USAA won't engage with us what they're doing about it or even acknowledging there is a problem. But I want you to know, if you're a USAA insured or a USAA banking customer, that there's definitely a lot of smoke here. And when there's this much smoke, there's some fire. And there is a problem at USAA, and be on your guard and be aware. Now, on the thing about hackers, a lot of what's happened with people's accounts being looted involves hackers, it involves AI, it involves pretexting, and this same stuff is happening across the banking world. And the banking industry is fighting from behind against determined, sophisticated hackers. So you need to be aware that this is a real and serious problem regardless of where you bank. And you need to be really thoughtful about having two-factor authentication and having it really beefed up with one of those crazy weird passwords that are really long on your financial accounts. And make sure the password on your financial accounts never is similar to a password you use anywhere else. Second, you want to have two-factor. To your phone, that's okay. There are other things like Google Authenticator for people who use Androids. And we're going to get there with security. It's just the cavalry's not riding in right now. So you need to set up as many precautions and steps you can to protect yourself. And know that you can receive a phone call, a text, an email, any kind of urgent communication that appears totally authentic from your bank or credit union. And it will create a sense of urgency. It could be from the police or a court system or whatever. And know that the ability of criminals to impersonate an organization or an official of an organization is so easy now and so convincing. And the thing they create, this sense of urgency, oh, you're going to be arrested today, blah, blah, blah. Step back. Take a deep breath. Somebody tells you your account's been hacked. Take that deep breath. Odds are they're predicting the future, not what's actually happened in the immediate past. It's a crook pretending to be whatever to get at your personal information or at your money. We right now have to be our own solid police department. We can't rely on the bank. We can't rely on the police in this case because they're after the fact. We are the ones in the midst of the moment that have to step back and say, they're telling me I have to do this right this second, right now, right away. That's your tip-off, almost with certainty, that you're about to be a victim of a scam, a con, a rip-off artist. Christa?
Okay, this first question is from Ethan in Pennsylvania. I have recently begun a new job and got out of customer service, but I don't have access to the company's 401k yet. To tide me over, I've opened a Roth IRA with Fidelity. Do you have any tips, or is there anything I need to watch for as I moved tax dollars from my savings account to this tax-advantaged account? Is there anything I should do over the course of the year to better prepare for tax time?
So, Ethan, first of all, it is not tax advantaged. A Roth is better than that. It's tax-free.
Well, you put in post-tax money.
You put in post-tax money, but you think you can put post-tax money in some kind of crazy insurance product, and they'll say, oh, it's so tax advantaged. The Roth is tax-free. The money grows tax-free over the years and the decades. You spend it tax-free when you're old enough to be able to spend it tax-free. It's awesome. The only thing I'd say is, unless you are really good at building an investment portfolio, which I'd say really good at it would be maybe 1 or 2 or 3% of us, The rest of us should do the target retirement fund choice. And with Fidelity, Fidelity has two flavors of this. Make sure you're in the index version because it has much lower costs. You just pick the target year closest to when you expect to retire and put all your money in your Roth IRA in the Fidelity index version of the target retirement fund.
And congrats on the job, Ethan.
Yeah.
And this one's from Michelle in Ohio. Is there any inexpensive way to get Wi-Fi on cruise ships?
Oh.
The cruise line is asking $25 per day if you pay prior to the cruise, and my phone carrier wants $30 per day. This does not include the international charges when we are on excursions.
Right.
You're familiar with this.
I am very familiar with this because we have been on over 24 cruises, and the Wi-Fi experience is usually underwhelming and crazy expensive. The service is usually pokey slow, except on the ships that now have Starlink, which is Elon Musk's thing from SpaceX, that is fantastic, robust, and fast. But no matter what ship you go on, if Wi-Fi is not included in your cabin, it's crazy expensive, and $300 a week. No, not 300. $175 a week is completely standard in the industry. So there is no real workaround on it. I would not trust using your cell phone under any circumstances, no matter what they tell you about being able to use it, use an international plan on a cruise ship. Keep your cell phone in airplane mode. Now, when you're in ports, if you can live without Wi-Fi on the ship, if you have a lot of stops, when you get to port, there's free Wi-Fi everywhere in the ports.
Just make sure you're off the ship. Yeah.
Yeah, all the bars have them, and lots of restaurants have free Wi-Fi. And so you can use Wi-Fi at every port. If you're on a ship that's day after day after day at sea, then obviously that's a problem. But if there's a lot of ports, you'll be fine avoiding paying that fee. But no, is there a way to get around paying a fortune? Not that I've heard of.
Tom in North Carolina says, my wife and I have owned our current cars for 23 years.
Wow. Wow.
We are in the process of purchasing a vehicle, and the dealership has a good interest rate. We're paying a substantial amount down and financing the rest for 4 years. We have the funds to pay the full price with cash and still have 6 months of emergency funds. The remaining balance after the purchase with a down payment would draw almost enough interest monthly to pay for the car payment. My question is, would it be better to purchase the car with cash or pay the monthly payment with the interest earned plus a little extra? And I had at least 3 questions this week about this. Someone who wanted to know there was a Tesla financing offer for 0.9%, I think, recently.
0.99, yeah.
Yeah, and so people want to know now that car dealers are offering these rates. And
okay, so Tom, in your case, pay cash. No doubt, even with the dealer offering a good interest rate, pay cash. You're going to have plenty of emergency funds available. Remember this, the interest rate you pay on a car loan is not deductible. The interest you earn on a savings account is fully taxed as ordinary income. So your spread between what you're earning in savings and what you're paying in interest on the car loan is actually larger than it appears just going by the interest rates of each. And just own it free and clear. You earn that right with what you've saved, and you have 23-year-old cars. That's fantastic. Now, the other situation, if you're offered a factory subsidized loan at 0.99 or 1.99, even 2.99, at anywhere up to 3%, take the cheap financing and keep your money in savings. Above 3%, you start getting into territory, again, because you don't get to deduct the interest you pay on the car loan, but you do pay full tax, ordinary income tax, on your savings interest earned. Above 3%, if you have the ability to pay cash and don't have that loan. Coming up ahead, speaking of your cash, there's some stuff you need to know to be aware of. People are still ripping you off in the banking world and the investing world on your hard-earned cash. So this is crazy. We've had so many people who have contacted us about just weird scenarios. One that's been extremely common over the last year is where you'll go out and you'll buy a CD, an online bank or wherever, and it'll be paying a great rate of interest. And then the CD will be coming due, and you're like, well, it's been great having the money there, and so then you just let it renew. And then later you figure out, wait a minute, the CD I went in and bought from them or bought online was paying 5 point whatever percent, and then they renewed me into one paying 0.3% or something along those lines, where they rip you off for leaving your money on autopilot. Standard operating practice of not all banks, but most. What you don't know about what happens with your money can really hurt you. And so you've got to actively manage the money that you've actively worked hard to save, living on less than what you make, and having that money saved. You want to really be fully aware of what's happening with it. If you do business with a discount broker, this could be Schwab, it could be Vanguard, it could be Fidelity, the big three of that, you have the ability to have FDIC insurance on broker-placed CDs. And these CDs pay higher rates than are usually available from the same bank that they're placing it with, because Fidelity, Vanguard, and Schwab are so big that banks offer them a higher rate for putting your money in an FDIC-insured CD than you can get going online with that same bank or walking into a branch of that same bank. It's not unusual that someone with one of the big banks could go in the door and be offered a tenth the amount of interest that you could get placing a broker-placed CD through Schwab, Vanguard, or Fidelity. Again, this is an area where being passive with your cash will burn you. Being active and engaged and knowing what's available makes a big difference. There's an overwhelming percent of Americans that have accounts with one, two, or all three of my favorite children, Vanguard, Schwab, and Fidelity. And through them, you have their market power and the fact that they are discounters to be able to get better deals on things like it. By comparison, if you've listened or watched me for a long time, you know I'm always talking trash about bank-affiliated brokerages and full commission brokerages, which are kind of the same thing, but there are some independents. Well, Barron's wrote a big story 2 weeks ago about how Morgan Stanley, one of the big full commission brokers, has been, these are my words, not theirs, been cheating customers by, with their idle cash, paying them 1/100th of 1% at a time that idle cash is earning 4 to 5 or so percent. 1/100th of 1%. And so they're getting sued about that for cheating people on their savings. Again, cheating is my word, not Barron's word. Barron's wrote it much more journalistically. In fact, I'll read the sentence. Morgan Stanley is being sued for allegedly breaching its fiduciary duty because it pays an interest rate of as little as 0.01%, which is 1/100th of 1%. I just want you to know this. When you have your money with a bank-affiliated brokerage or with a full commission brokerage, you face a potential twofer. The person you're dealing with likely is not a fiduciary, meaning they refuse to enter into a legal agreement with you that they must put your interests first, last, and always. That you are who they're there for, and they must do what's best for you. So that's really, really important. Plus, the products they'll put you in are products that the full commission brokerage or the bank is pushing its brokerage operation to put you in junk that's vastly inferior to what you would be put in if they were operating as a fiduciary. And in any case, at much higher cost to you in fees than you'd pay otherwise. So your money, what you don't know in this case, can really hurt you.
Okay, we'll go to questions. This one came in from Rick in Wisconsin. I had several financial planners pitch annuities, life insurance, as a savings and tax reduction strategy, as you mentioned earlier, and long-term care insurance. Part of my ultimate cost on these products is the commissions paid to the financial planner. The planners are fiduciaries. In the spirit of financial transparency, must or should the fiduciaries disclose the commissions they would make if I purchased these products? Or must I ask outright how much commission they would receive?
So Rick, I don't care if this insurance salesperson told you that they were a fiduciary. They are not a fiduciary. A fiduciary is legally required to put your interests first. And if they are selling commission products, they may be holding themselves out as this fuzzy kind of thing that they try to trick people with, saying they are a fee-based advisor. A fee-based advisor is one that says it costs this much money to have our advice. But as you buy investments from us, it reduces the fees you pay. Those people are not fiduciaries. Now, if you're dealing with somebody who holds himself or herself out as a fiduciary, but they're then trying to sell you commission products, they're not really a fiduciary. There are people, as Christa has found out, who are pretending to wear two hats. And in one hat, oh, I'm a fiduciary over here. But then when they try to sell you something, it's through them being a separate entity.
Different entity.
Different entity. And in that, they're not being a fiduciary. It's a bunch of hogwash. You're either a fiduciary or you're not. And I am just, this is such a hard area because I'll have people ask me questions being out and about, and they'll say, well, I'm being told I should do blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, oh no, don't do that. And they're like, why? And I explain this whole thing about that's being pitched to you simply because of the commissions that'll be earned on it, not what's in your best interest. And this is a rough area because I love capitalism, obviously. I am as capitalistic as anybody could be. And capitalism works best when interests are aligned. So often in the investment world and insurance world, interests are not aligned. What benefits that salesperson or that person at a bank-based brokerage or a full commission brokerage, what benefits them actually hurts you. And this is a breakdown in how capitalism should work. Capitalism works best in enlightened self-interest. When they win, you win. When you win, they win. Unfortunately, in modern investing in the United States, when they win often, you lose. That's the wrong relationship.
Jim in Missouri says, I know Wealthfront is a recommended high-yield online savings account option in your June of 2024 article, and that banking practices and disclosures were analyzed as mentioned at the beginning of the article. However, with the news and discussion about Synapse's, I guess you would say, bankruptcy and the resulting issues for YADA customers, should we be concerned using a fintech like Wealthfront? Also, could an issue be like what happened at YADA impact Fidelity when it comes to their cash account and sweep feature, since they are not a bank either?
So we have not covered this, but there were people that were heavily affected by this smaller fintech operation called Yada that used an intermediary called Synapse, and there's a lot of money that's missing. Nobody knows, was it embezzled? What happened with the money? There are a lot of FDIC insured banks that are holding on to funds that are afraid to release them anywhere. And the net effect is that people using the Yada FinTech app can't access their funds. And it's going to be a good while till it becomes clear what actually happened here. It is an unusual situation. I don't know how much we can take from it because we don't know. Was this a bad actor who embezzled funds? It is completely unclear. And so I'm not ready to make any recommendations on the whole idea of using a fintech because this was such an odd, unusual situation that has still not played out yet.
Any concerns about Fidelity?
Oh, no concerns about Fidelity investments. They are as rock solid. Your money's as safe could be. I have no worries at all. And if you ever hear a story like this about Yada and Synapse and you're like, what's this going to mean to me? And you're using somebody like Fidelity, Vanguard, or Schwab with your idle cash, you can put your money in a U.S. Treasury fund inside it, and you are a direct obligation of the federal government. Your money is safer than is even in a bank in that situation. This case, what happened was there were intermediaries between the fintech and the banks, and somewhere in that intermediary process, things have melted down in a very, very odd, unusual circumstance, completely different than how people would do business with Wealthfront or Fidelity or anybody like that.
Zach in Texas says, thanks in part to advice from your show, I paid off my credit card earlier this month. It was over $40,000 less than a year ago.
Wow, over 40,000 to zero in a year?
Yep. Well, unfortunately, he says, half of that was paid by my inheritance after my father's passing last year.
Sorry you lost your dad.
And the other half was a vigilant change in spending behavior. My question is regarding my credit score. It was 825 last month, and now, after making a $5,900 payment that brought the statement balance to zero, my score is 798. What gives? Any idea what's happening and whether or not this is temporary or permanent?
So credit scores, if you set up a Credit Karma dashboard and you watch your credit score, it moves up and down all the time. Like I saw mine just yesterday, and they're tracking, let me see, is it Equifax and TransUnion, I think is the two they track. And one of them had gone up 17 points in that 24 hours, and the other had gone down 21 points. And there was a spread between the two of them significantly. And it's just kind of like a yo-yo with credit scores. And it's always a game of horseshoes. It's not precise. So at 798, you are golden. I mean, anything above, depending on what you're trying to get a loan for, 760 and 780 puts you into the golden territory from that to 850. So I would not fret the movements from 825 to 798. You may go today and you may be back in the 800s. The act of paying off that balance actually should have raised your score because the percent of your available credit you're using went down. So who knows what factor it was, but nothing really for you to be concerned with. And again, I'm sorry about you losing your dad. And I'm also glad that the money you received from your dad took you halfway to paying this off, and you were determined to double the impact of what you received as inheritance from your dad and created this financial independence in your life, which is wonderful.
Sure, his dad would be so proud of the use of that money. Yeah.
Right. And I want to thank you so much for joining us today, and we'll have more advice for your wallet coming your way tomorrow. Remember what we're about: saving more, spending less, and avoiding getting ripped off.